Have you ever been through a time of uncertainty in your life when you didn't know how things were going to turn out or if they were going to even turn out at all? Maybe in a relationship, maybe uncertain about your job or finances, maybe uncertain about things that you really have no control over. Those can be terrifying times, and we're going to talk about them on this week's Over the Hump. When I was in the 6th or 7th grade, my sister was already married and she and her husband lived in Wilmington, Delaware. We lived in southern West Virginia. And one Thanksgiving, we were planning on spending Thanksgiving with them in Delaware. And so I was picked up at school and we headed out towards Delaware. Well, it was one of the worst snowstorms ever recorded in that region, and we found ourselves in it, blinding snow as my dad was driving, and we got to this spot in Virginia where cars were pulled over to the side and you could barely move at a snail's pace, and we ultimately ended up in the middle of this bridge where traffic just came to an absolute dead stop. I remember you could roll down the window of the car and lay your hand out on top of the snow. That's how high the snow was piling up, and that fast. But I remember as we were sitting on that bridge and we weren't moving, all of a sudden it felt like the bridge was shaking or moving. And I began to panic big time simply because I didn't know. I was more certain that we were about to die than I was certain that we were ever going to make it to Delaware. But I do remember this. I remember my dad saying, "Son, it's going to be okay. Son, don't worry. Son, we're going to be all right. The bridge is strong. We're going to make it there." And I was still panicking, though, because it felt to me like the bridge was shaking. And my dad said, "The bridges are built to do that, son, because if they were very rigid, then they would crack and break, and we would be in trouble. So the very sign that the bridge is shaking is a good sign that we're going to be okay." Well, obviously, here I am, 58 years old now, and we were okay. We eventually made it to Delaware, and of course we've had stories to tell about that worst snowstorm ever, the Turkey Day storm, they called it at that time. You know, there are those times in our lives when things just seem uncertain, and two of the greatest things that happen to us, one is fear, that we're in danger, maybe in danger of losing our job, as I mentioned before, in danger of losing a relationship, or in danger of not being able to pay our bills, or whatever danger that there is. The other one is discouragement. Discouragement comes easily during times of uncertainty. Well, when Moses was 120 years old, God kind of called an end to his journey and his ministry of leading the Israelites. And he was going to turn things over to a young man by the name of Joshua. And Joshua would continue to lead the Israelites into the Promised Land. Well, Joshua had been on that journey for many years, and of course he'd seen all the troubles and all the trials and all the tribulations. And of course they were nearing the end of 40 years of being out in the wilderness. And Joshua had some uncertainty for certain. But Moses, being very wise, said something to Joshua. And I want to say it to you today because you may be going through a time of uncertainty right now, or certainly in the future. You'll find this in Deuteronomy chapter 31, and it's verse 8. And here's what Moses says to Joshua. "The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you or forsake you. Do not be afraid and do not be discouraged." The Lord, Joshua, and those of you watching this video, the Lord, if you're one of his, goes before you. In other words, he's ahead of you. In other words, he's already seen the future. He knows that you make it across the bridge even though the bridge is shaking. He goes before you. But not only does he go before you, Moses says, Joshua, he goes with you. Right there in your time of uncertainty, right there in the middle of your circumstance, right there in that car, in that snowstorm, on that bridge, in the Turkey Day storm, he was with us because he goes with us. And then, of course, he goes on to tell Joshua, you know what? He's never going to leave you, and he's never going to forsake you. So what is your uncertainty about right now? What is the thing that seems to be dangerous to you, seems to be threatening to your whole being? It seems to consume all of your thoughts. Well, the Lord's ahead of you. He's there in the future. He's with you right now. He will never leave you nor forsake you. And on the basis of those four things, going before us, being with us, never leaving us, and never forsaking us, we too can hear those final words that Moses uttered to Joshua. Joshua, don't be afraid. Joshua, don't get discouraged. It's where our faith connects to our uncertainty that we see the mighty power of God. My prayer for you is this, that this little message today will help you get over the hump of your uncertainty. God bless you, and may you have a great rest of the week.